Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and I have another update kind of thingy to bring you today. Here's the deal. A long time ago, I had a plugin called Distance, and it's come out on VST. It's been ported to all of the things, like it's Linux VST and all that kind of stuff. But I've recently done a plugin called Atmosphere, which has a whole different technology for slew clipping and handling high frequencies as you sort of crunch them. So what I'm going to do now is show you the plus and minus, or the before and after, with these various plugins. Here's a little track called Empty Pictures. I can turn distance on, and it does this. As you can see, it's EQing things. It's taken highs away because highs will not carry over long distances. So it's sort of EQing it, it's softening everything a little bit. Here, however, is distance 2. Sounding kind of different? There's a reason why it's got a different behavior. We've got our dry wet control here, and this is the default settings. This is a kind of special little setting because distance 2 can also function as like a loudinator. If you're willing to have your stuff sound like it's farther away, distance 2 can make it louder. Here's a little bit of an example. I've got my bit shift gain going on here. So the original sound is like this. Here, I'll bring it up. Distance. Now notice the levels. This is still coming around at minus 9 dB, or 8.8, because I shut the bit shift gain off. I turn it on and it's attenuating, but if I turn distance off and leave bit shift gain on, there we are back at the, in fact it's even a little bit louder. There's 8 dB. Now let's do that change again. A little bit bigger, But you may say, why is the bass like radically bigger than everything else and kind of distorty? Well, that's because I have to show you something interesting about distance. Distance is not just an EQ. We'll put pitch shift back on. This is an EQ. It's very good at throwing huge bass in. This is one of the things that just the original Distance does. This is distance 2, but if we go to full wet like this one has, bet you didn't see that coming. That is the distance algorithm with these settings. And the distance algorithm is a very extreme thing. That incredible grind is hidden by the tiniest amount of dry signal. But if you have it full on, it's actually at a very high setting, and it's just trashing everything. It's kind of magical, isn't it? And the farther you go towards wet, the more of a loudination quality you get out of it, because it's just stepping on the simulated air that hard. As you can see, we've got a bunch of controls and we've only touched one of them, so let's play with some more. Full wet, we can get a lot of bass going on if we do full darken, or indeed if we crank everything up as far as it'll go. That's more like you could call it your sort of Douglas Adams disaster area tone of being recorded while in orbit around an entirely different planet. You might ask, what would it sound like to be next to the PA stacks on the planet which the band is on? It would sound kind of like this. It's just a strange algorithm. There's a lot going on here, and it can make some pretty heinous noises when you slam it hard enough. It's very grindy, very bright. It gets very trashed. So you can balance it in all kinds of ways. But that's not the only way you can handle it. We're still looking at stuff with extremely high atmosphere settings. That's, of course, the algorithm that we're using. But the way that's applied, we got the dry wet in the end. That brings in dry again. Darken is adding high frequency roll-off to the way that atmosphere works. But this atmosphere control is an overall scale that'll boost into the algorithm and then cut after the algorithm. So it is volume normalized and goes to a heinously high level. However, you don't have to use it at the heinously high level. Let's take darken down to 0 so that we have the most obvious effect and start with 0. You'd hardly notice anything was happening at all. Until hear that snare? And dry. And darker. Hear that snare? You can get a real stagey quality off of this. And again, it's at full crank and wet, so if I let a little dry in, you get some clean high frequencies to help define the sound. But hey, who wants to finish it? Sort of full crank tones here. But wait, there's more. We can demonstrate it on, say, a regular drum kit. Sounds like this. But if we crank everything up as far as it'll go, it makes it sound like this. How's that? Again, that's as far away as you can possibly get, but we can pull it back a little bit. We can reduce the darken just a little bit. And we can bring a little dry in. And then the original sound was actually this. That's a handy way of using distance. if you were trying to get drums to smash and be huge. Oh wait, did somebody say smash? Nasty. Or we can have full bright. And then what we do there is just bleed in enough to get an edge on things. Compared to and that gives us a nice sort of overall smash to things. It's a very good drum clipper, this. And if you want it a lot dirtier, we can get a sort of dirty room sound happening. Or even darker. We'll go back to our default setting of 618 and our default atmosphere of 85. This is why I chose those settings. You can hear it's completely transformed. Also much more range of letting it be louder. This is what distance can do for you, because the original sound is like this. So these are things you can do with Distance2. And my hope is that you like Distance2 and get lots of good use out of it. I am supported by a Patreon, and the Patreon enables me to do this kind of work and bring these things to you so that you can have them. Like those who are participating with the Patreon help make all of this possible for everybody. Also, some Patreon, you get some things that are kind of special. Not that anything is ever hidden totally, because they don't do that. But, for instance, if you're on my Patreon, you will see first, before anybody else, the something like this. For Patreon patrons, I'll show you what this does. There is a thing that I do with this and FFmpeg, which is a freely available but very difficult to operate video editor. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Today I'm here to show you Distance2. And as you might well see, in some ways I think it is a big improvement from, say, Distance1, and it kind of makes things louder rather than softer, versus Distance2. I hope you like Distance2. I think people might get a lot of interesting use out of it, and it doesn't have to be just used in the normal way either. You can do kind of crazy, weird things with it. Or you can even do the thing that I did from the very beginning, where you use the default settings right here And it'll get you extra gain while sounding more or less similar to what you already started with. Peaking right out at 0 versus 8 dB of headroom, and it sounds a lot bigger. I hope you like Distance2. And thank you very much, everybody, for checking out all these plugins, sticking with me for the last year or more. Actually, it's been 10 years, but I've been doing the Patreon-supported free everything for a little over a year. And yeah, thanks for helping me do all of that. There's a lot more where that came from, which is a scary thing, seeing as I've put out like 100 plugins or so over the last couple of years. But it's still true. There's a lot more where that came from. I'll talk to you later.